Before we get to your scheduled video, please remember that likes and comments tell YouTube to promote our work to other people, and subscribing to the channel tells you when something new drops. You can also head to the link tree in the description to peruse my books, join us on Discord, or support us on Patreon. You can get episodes of Journey of Wrestling and Violent Profiles early, as well as a load of other treats. Even just $1 a month earns you a name drop for being cool. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Greetings and salutations, fellow amateur proctologist. It's I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by the boy.
Hey!
This is the Two Nerds Podcast. Today we're talking about the legend of Vox Machina Season 2. I didn't forget the name of the show, you did. Before we get into that, we should talk about who's cool.
I remembered some names. Man, they're not coming. What? Start me off. What's one?
Do you feel like we don't have enough to talk about the legend of Vox Machina?
Okay, fine. It's Rob, a guy from Ohio, and Passion Killer 7-Eleven. I was doing a funny bit.
I was willing to go with you for the bit. I mean, you might be right. Maybe we should go back. So this concluded Friday. Yeah. I mean, that's never going to not be the case.
Yeah, it's well, I mean...
It did conclude Friday.
It always concluded on a Friday, but this concluded Friday implies it concluded last Friday, and that's not always going to be...
You know what? It concluded when you finished watching it, so if you finished watching it Friday...
Nah, by that definition, it could have concluded any days.
So, Rob... Passion Killer 7-Eleven, and a guy from Ohio.
Alright, so this is Season 2 of The Legend of Vox Machina, which is, for those of you who are somehow subscribed to this channel, but unaware of Critical Role, hello, what's it like in the alternate dimension in which you exist?
We got a lot of wrestling fans.
Is the animated adaptation of the first season of the live stream actual play D&D podcast / show Critical Role. It follows the titular Vox Machina, which is the name for the adventuring party that the adventuring party has like they're a band, which is something all of the Critical Role adventuring parties have, which has always fucking confused me.
It's,
because they have it in universe.
I don't hate it because, like, if you're a mercenary company, you're like, yeah, we're Stevens Wolves, you know.
No, I mean, it makes sense. It's just, it is one of the points of world building in those campaigns that are all set in that same world in Taldore that confuses me because people don't talk like that. Like, Vox Machina, you know, we must thank Vox Machina for their contributions, blah, blah, blah. That is said with such utter sincerity.
Well, I mean, like, it's, the people in the world probably don't know that it's a joke about how they're voice actors.
Right, but it is, though.
I mean, that's the magic of being a DM, right? You take that shit seriously.
That's fair, that's fair. The Mighty Nine also, that's not even an audible pun. That's a textual pun, and lots of people say it, and confuses me. And the newest one is Bell's Hells, and that's just frustrating. That's just an annoying phrase. But
this has been our podcast.
I wanted to bring it up because it occurred to me. I don't.
Well, it's a big thing in tabletop discussion, actually, because, you know, we're getting kind of off track a little bit from what the show is, but that's fine. I own the station. So it's been one of those precedents that has been set for the recent crop of people inspired to pick up Dungeons and Dragons and ancillary hobbies.
Yeah, your party has to have a cool, fun party name. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't. You guys, in a campaign of mine a couple years ago, set up one, but because you were literally building a company.
Yeah, we needed something for the letterhead.
Yeah. But you see it a lot. Like, and I've seen threads back when I was on Reddit of people going both, oh my god, my players keep coming up with names for their adventuring parties and it's driving me nuts, or the rest of my party, or My players won't come up with a name for their adventuring company. What do?
But it just occurred to me as
Sure.
I was saying it out loud. But the show itself, this is the second season, so if you haven't watched the first one, it would be odd to start here.
Yeah, we did a podcast on that one too. So, like, even if you don't want to watch the show, but you want to keep up with our opinions, go watch that other podcast.
And thank you for wanting to keep up with our opinions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, deeply. For $1, I would appreciate it.
Enough
in
to
name
say
specifically.
to say that you are cool. Well, I mean, $1 would make you cool, and we would be forced to acknowledge.
Right. Yes, that is how that works.
But the second season I feel is better than the first.
I would 100% agree, even though the second season shoves my favorite character into a closet where he dies of suffocation.
He doesn't. He's not the protagonist of the season this time.
Yes, and that's a crime.
You do love you, Percy.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I love Taliesin, and that's...
Pretty much everything he does.
Yeah. But we trade in for more Grog, and it fixes something about Grog from season 1 that I didn't like, because they made him more of an idiot.
The general premise of the show is it is an adventuring party in a very, very archetypal D&D world, but it is mature animation, adult animation. I don't know how to say that without making it sound like it's porn. It's not porn. You can get a little porny.
Depends on what you're into.
It can get a little porny.
I just stare at that title card for a while and imagine.
But it's the... they're allowed to say the fuck word, is how
They
I'll put...
say the fuck word a lot. They're a lot more organic about that, too. Season 1, sometimes they would just be like a regular line like, I'm gonna go out and get some fucking breakfast, you fucks.
There were edges in the first season of them looking directly into camera. This is a show for grown-ups. We can say the fuck word. It's a little more organic this season. I really, really like The Legend of Vox Machina. I actually like it more than I liked Critical Role. Notably, I stopped listening and watching to Critical Role after a while because it's just not... maybe I don't have the attention span for it. I'll put it on myself. But this is a great distillation of that story that cleans up some weirdness around the edges and makes the characters more coherent than sometimes, even good role players can come up with off the top of their fucking head. Because there's actual writers involved, and they're smoothing off what happens in the story into stuff that makes sense and has a good narrative arc, which it didn't always necessarily in the game. Because that's not how improv works.
This is the season that starts to edge into stuff I have not seen, because I watched for a lot longer than you did, but I still kind of drifted away after... not long after where the season concludes, and they remix some of the events. There's a portion where, spoiler alert, they go into the Feywild for a little while, and I was not around for that.
I will say that where I stopped watching the first season of Critical Role is, I believe, literally in the middle of the first episode of this season of The Legend of Vox Machina.
Oh my god, yeah, I skipped a lot of that shit. It was really... We should do something. Should we do something?
And that drove me completely batty, and I had to leave.
Well, it's so, like, that's...
And this, they don't get to do... The characters don't get to... The actors, voice acting the characters, don't get to pull back from the narrative and spend fucking 4 hours kvetching over what they should do. The characters have like 2 seconds to decide, and then we fucking move right along, and that makes the narrative so much cleaner and better and easier to absorb.
It makes actual play shows so interesting to me. Critical Role is the only one I've really been able to get into. There were some before that I kind of enjoyed, but it's one of those things where if it's not your specific parasocial relationship, then it really depends on what you're watching for. And if you're not watching for a bunch of adults awkwardly unable to decide whether or not to open a door and how for upwards of 20 minutes, it can get kind of tedious sometimes.
I also will say that I think the only character, at least for me, I'm speaking sort of vague generalities about the season. I do kind of want to break down episode by episode because I think they make good little, 3-episode arcs, because they got released in 3-episode bunches, and they did a really good job of that this time. But generally speaking, the only character in Vox Machina, in the Id Party, that I feel is not better in the adaptation is Vax. I feel like Vax loses a lot of the sweetness and like genuine heart that he is portrayed with in the original campaign. The bits of it I have seen and saw when I was watching it. The character of Vax in the series doesn't have that. He's much more of a, I mean, for good reasons, but a dickhead.
I think both of the twins get it. I think that both of their characters lose a lot of that charm.
Whereas I never got that charm from Vex. Even in the original game, again, I haven't watched a whole lot of the original game. I've seen one big set, basically the whole Whitestone arc, and then bits and pieces here and there because I exist on D&D internet. But, I mean, for me, Vex pretty much has her one character trait, which is I am cartoonishly greedy, like some sort of mustache-twirling villain. That is my character trait. Also, I have a bear. That is the other character trait that I have.
I mean, and that's easy to come across with, especially since haggling annoys you as an entertainment medium, and why wouldn't it? But I think there's a lot of charm in the way Laura plays her character, and in a lot of the small interactions, and even when she's talking to Vax, she's not as sweet in the show as she is in the game. You don't get... They're both very rough around the edges and closed off, and
that's why I want to talk about this, because that is just a difference in our perception.
Sure.
I feel like Vex is actually very, like, caring towards Vax this whole season.
I mean, she is, but it's not the same. That's the best way I can put it. I think both of these characters are being portrayed as these characters, but because we don't have 3 hours per 10 minutes of episode,
right? It's very condensed.
We lose a lot of that, and you hit the more important character points. As much as I was joking about Percy not being the star of this, season.
No, that's true. He very much takes a back seat. That's not a joke. That's just an observation.
He takes a back seat, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, he had like a whole season.
Yeah, and secondly, he's not really doing much in these areas. We got a little hint of the black powder merchant, and that was nice.
Yeah,
but otherwise, he's kind of quiet here. He's
contributing, and he has like the episode in the Feywild has a bit that's very Percy centric.
Yeah.
As like a comedic character, as opposed to the very serious, dour character he was in season 1. I don't hate that at all. But they did start the show with his side quest.
Sure. Yeah. And if you're not going to involve a certain Dragonborn who shall remain nameless, you have to.
Yes, because that's why I jumped in. I was told to wait until after that character was gone and then try it out. So I did, and it starts with the Whitestone arc. But do you have any general observations about the series?
About this season?
Yeah, about this season, about the series as a whole, maybe?
I will say the arc with Grog's sword was played a lot better. Maybe this was me drifting while I was watching it live. Not live, but like watching the actual play. But it felt a lot like the players at the table understood that Grog's sword was evil and wanted to nip that in the bud before it got troublesome.
But the characters had no in-character reason to do so.
Like, not much of one, anyway.
And that's, you know what? That's kind of the reality of being in a D&D game. Sometimes that's going to happen. Because you're not... The audience is the players. This is kind of an extra struggle that Matt Mercer as a DM has to work with as the DM of Critical Role, is he has to also entertain the audience. But usually, a certain amount of metagaming as a DM is fine. Because... the audience is the players, so if they're fine with it, who cares, really? Up to a certain point. There's obviously sort of room for nuance there. But in a show, you can't do that, for obvious reasons.
Right.
Even if we, the audience, know that Craven Edge is a fucking problem, capital P, the characters have to find out for them to be able to do anything about it in a way that makes sense, without the players there to give that emotional resonance, even to the stream audience of... oh no, they know, and it's a problem, how are they going to get around it? You can't do that in the show. So they had to change some shit around, as I understand, to make it have actually had at least one negative consequence, which, as I understand, in the actual play, it didn't really.
It wasn't as bad, at the very least. And maybe I'm misremembering. I'm not going to go back and watch, several episodes trying to do research. it's not that fucking important. It's different from what I remember it. But it was equivalent to, I think Matt Mercer might have had more of a, 400,000 word slow burn coffee shop AU romance arc planned, and the players went, and then they kiss. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, we're done with this now because it's giving all of us anxiety. No more.
So I liked the extra depth they added to that, making it an issue that needed to be solved when it was solved. And
as I mentioned, and I'll probably go into it more as we go through the episodes, I think pretty much every other member of the party is if not at least a little, and in some cases vastly improved by this adaptation.
I would agree as well.
Just because it's probably a case of these people who spent so long playing these characters and having the chance to go back and do a second draft on them to really clean up the lines and clean up the character they were trying to portray from off the dome, this is the equivalent of acting freestyle, to actual, I am sitting down with a pen and paper, I'm writing something now.
The places where Vax is very bro-y and kind of fucks around a little bit that were removed in large part. The places where Vex is kind of flirty and haughty that were removed in large part because it doesn't fit their grander character arc. It's cruft. It's not something that the cartoon viewing audience
The
needs.
player was having a good time, and that's not a sin. But if we're making a character for a narrative, it's just extra shit they don't need.
And I've done that a lot when I've translated characters from a role-playing game to a story. It just shaves some stuff off because it's not
important. It's not necessary. It doesn't improve the narrative. And I feel like that refining has really actually helped a lot of the members of Vox Machina.
I don't think I should say that Vex and Vax are bad characters.
No, they're different.
But I do miss those parts of them. It made them feel less like tropey D&D characters.
I miss the heart that Vax had. Because maybe it's just that motherfucker's really charming. His face acting is really charming.
Oh, yeah.
But
every time Liam calls him referee, my heart soars.
Referee. And that might be that might be pure parasocial sauce. I just found that actor really charming. But that's about the only thing I miss. Everything else for me, all the stuff they cut, better. The weird over-the-top, almost like boner bloodlust that Grog had, being cut down to a much more normal amount of bloodlust for a barbarian to have, that's great. That's a great change. Real happy about that change. Sometimes Travis Willingham got a little too into the sauce when he was describing stuff that Grog would do.
Yeah.
But and there's 1,000 little things I could talk about like that, but it's just it's nitpicky stuff. Ultimately, I really like these characters and a lot more now.
So you wanted to go through these in each little arc.
Yeah.
Why don't you lead the path on that, my friend?
Okay, so the first 3 episodes, The Rise of the Chroma Conclave, The Trials of Vasselheim, and The Sunken Tomb. These are... They do a great job of making little narrative arcs, little seasons, little packages of like a movie that you watch in the little 3-episode drops they do. This is a great example of that. This has a first, second, and third act. It is a complete narrative. Unfortunately, it is a tragedy. Because it is ultimately Act 1 of the fucking season itself. But it starts off with the destruction of the thing that they spend, that was their safe harbor in the whole first season. And as I understand it, the safe harbor for a lot of the game that happened. Matt Mercer mentioned it in an interview that this was such a great opportunity to just slap his players across the face and go, well, what now, huh? And as a DM, I respect and sympathize. But I think it's really good that the second episode is a little weaker. The Trials of Vasselheim. I think, unfortunately, because they had to move some stuff around, and there was two simultaneous scenes that were not simultaneous in the original source material, that were vague old person not monologues vaguely about vague bullshit for a while, and the characters are confused and don't know how to respond.
Well, and in neither original scenario was it that vague.
And like, I understand in the series why it has to be, because the old vague man being vaguely fucking martial arts fucking Hong Kong action movie old vague man at Grog, the moron, who's obviously not gonna get it. You need that there, and that needs to be frustrating, because then the payoff later is so much more delicious. But that combined with the fucking vague Sphinx vaguely narrating about vague bullshit for a while, it had to be there, because there's a bunch of shit that is a stand-in for, as I gather, that you just can't do in an animated show.
I mean, it's a lot of a plot cul-de-sacs.
It's just cut them all, put one thing in there where they're all forced to confront, like, their deepest fear, as it were. You know, what are you scared of? What keeps you up at night? And the Sphinx just basically looks at them and does the equivalent of like a Batman verbal takedown at all of them in sequence. Vaguely and kind of smugly. That also would have been fine on its own. But the two together make that portion of that episode incredibly frustrating to watch. And there really wasn't a better way to do it, because this is where those fit in the narrative.
Yeah, I don't like what happened with the entirety of the Slayer's take. I don't like that they made Zara more of a villain. I thought she was really cool.
Yeah, as I understand it, that's a very big change, right?
Yeah.
Zara and the older brother from Boy Meets World were like friends of the party. They were cool.
They were guest players.
Yeah.
But while I don't have as many problems with what they did, which I don't see his name on here, and I cannot remember it for the life of me. Cashaw. Well, I don't mind as much what they did with Cashaw, because ultimately he ends up being pretty much the same character. I'm not super fond of what they did with Zara. I don't know. I was really looking forward to her showing up.
They make them both antagonists. They made Zara an antagonist, and Cashaw was like, well, I mean, I have known you longer, so I guess that's what we're doing? Okay, I came here with you. You're my ride, I guess.
Well, and they just don't get to explore her personality, and I'm wondering if they will. And that's a shame.
I mean, they have essentially infinite seasons of this show. She's not she's not an antagonist by the end of it, so there's no reason why she couldn't come back. And it's a great way of introducing the Pokeball in a way that makes sense in universe. That's good.
I forget where they picked that thing up.
Somewhere silly, I'm sure.
No, I don't think so. But
but I will say I fucking love the because this ends with the sunken tomb, and that's after. When do they have the fight with the fucking beholder?
It is categorically not a beholder.
It's not. When do they have the fight with for legal reasons? This is very distinct from a beholder.
I believe that's the sunken tomb.
No, because the sunken tomb is when. It's got to be those who walk away.
Yeah, it doesn't mention about it in either episode summary. I don't know. The fight with the beholder was cool.
But the sunken tomb is a big moment from the original thing that you were going to be hard-pressed to do well, and as I understand it from all the people who watched when it originally happened, they did a great job.
Yeah, they did pretty good. I really like the mechanics of that scene, like, in the game. I like how Mercer did it. I like the choices he made. I don't know that I'd make them myself, but I respect it, and not getting to actually see that kind of takes away from it, interestingly. But,
that's because it's been much cleaned up in the narrative.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because ultimately the only thing that ends up mattering is the final thing. The thing that caused Matt Mercer as a DM to go, oh ho, your trade offer is accepted.
But, oh wow, we're missing episode summaries. Wikipedia is lazy today.
Tisk.
Oh, they're adding them as we
speak. Literally as we speak.
Delightful.
Hopefully by the time we get there, the rest are there. The second 3 episodes, 4, 5, and 6. That's the one. 4 is the one with the fight with the Beholder. Because that's when Vax has his fucking fight with the...
It is an uncontrollable monster which petrifies.
It is a Beholder. It is cool as shit. It is a really great adaptation of that same character idea in a way that Wizards of the Coast can't be dickheads about, and I appreciate that. You may think this is a Beholder. We can legally prove it isn't. But they did the rays very interestingly. I just really liked it. And also, this is a good point to note. This is a good time to note the fight scenes in this show are fucking baller.
Yeah, they really... Like, last season had one really excellent fight scene, and it was the final one. I mean, the others were fine, but this season is a lot of really excellent fight scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we get episode 5, Pass Through Fire. This is the Keyleth episode.
Man, you know, we talk about how we don't like Keyleth that much, but it's from watching the actual play. She's so cleaned up in the series.
This is the character that Marisha Ray was trying to portray.
And this is when you go back and you shave off all those awkward moments, like casting that wind spell, or the skywriting she did here, or any number of things that went terrible.
That were just, you know, I mean, we all did shit when we were cringe teenagers who've never played D&D before. She might not have been a teenager at the time, but as I understand it, this was her first D&D campaign, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Like, she was just new, and clearly as someone who is very anxious about doing the right thing and being a help, and didn't know how to do that. So it sometimes Keyleth came off pretty cringe. But
it's nowhere near as bad in the show.
No, in the show, I think she's just charming.
Yeah.
They really cleaned that character up. I really like Keyleth in the show. And you can really get across, it really comes through, the absolute love letter to the Avatar universe that Keyleth is. Like, intentionally so. So much so that I believe, I watched a Q&A with the, like a post-episode Q&A with the various people from the show. Marisha Ray was so excited that the actor for Korra plays her mom in this that she was squeeing. Like, Keyleth is manifestly a love letter to the Avatar series, which I really like, and it comes through really well here. This is a great episode. This is a great little bottle episode. It doesn't really...
Keyleth walks away with some new powers, and...
She walks away with a power-up because she's not going to end up with a cool artifact by the end of the season, and they got to power up all the characters.
Right. And this was around the time when she was doing, I believe, Earth Elemental stuff, so they just replaced it with Fire for the narrative structure.
And also, Fire is cooler to animate.
I suppose.
It's like, I don't have that, like, as gospel, but that's got to be the reason. It's just more fun to draw.
Possibly. Third episode, episode 6 into Rhyme Cleft is when we get the really nasty stuff with
Craven Edge.
Craven Edge, thank you. I was finding every noun on there that wasn't Craven Edge. This is another thing I'm kind of sad how they had to end up translating it, the fight against the Sphinx. It was cool, don't get me wrong. I really liked it in the actual play.
What was the difference? Because as I understand it, the conclusion here is just entirely new.
They, there was, like, some time aging effects on the cast, on the characters, and, like, just the fight was very optional boss in a mid-Final Fantasy game, sort of, oh god.
We done fucked up, we shouldn't be here.
Yeah, it was really cool, and, like, I understand why they did what they did. I don't hate it or anything, but well, it wasn't as awesome.
It serves as a great moment of character building for Scanlan.
Yeah.
The character who may, even more than Keyleth, have benefited the most from this adaptation.
Yeah, it depends.
I like the version of Scanlan in this series a lot better than the one in the actual play. Because Sam Riegel is a very funny dude, but a lot of his humor can be sort of derailing. This puts rails on Scanlan to make him better serve a narrative, and I think that's a positive change. Okay, right along. No other thoughts?
I don't know.
Okay.
Should I?
Right on to the next three, which is the Fey Realm, the Echo Tree, and Tests of Pride. I'm going to be honest, the Fey Realm really sticks with me. The Echo Tree doesn't so much. What the fuck happened this episode?
That's the one where they, the twins met their dad, and they actually had the confrontation with Sondor.
Oh, yeah, this was the one with the Archfey.
It's the second half of the Fey Realm.
I just kind of thought of this as one episode, I guess.
Yeah.
This is maybe a counterpoint to what I said earlier. This is not a good, bottled 3 acts. The first and the second episodes here are just kind of one big episode to my brain.
Well, and I mean, that's because nothing was going on with Grog. Like, we got cuts back to the gnomes and Grog, but they were just traveling until they got to Fonzie's house, and then they were hanging out with Fonzie.
Fonzie hits Grog and fixes him.
Well, not really.
No, sort of. He's awake. I really liked the traveling scene with the gnomes and Grog.
Yeah.
Using Grog as like a raft and shit.
Yeah, they had some good physical comedy.
Yeah, good physical comedy, good, traveling montage.
It was like Weekend at Bernie's if Bernie could talk and was not having a great time.
And was sad about being a Bernie. I think you mentioned this, and I'll echo it. Henry Winkler does a fucking amazing job in this. And celebrity guest voice actors don't always.
When one transitions from acting to voice acting, sometimes it doesn't take right. Henry Winkler is maybe even better in a voice acting booth than he is as a live action actor. He really does well. Very charming in his role.
And then Test of Pride, which...
that shifts more to the Grog half.
Yeah, that's the Grog half of the story, which is great.
Yeah, we get his backstory, and it sets up for the final 3 episodes.
Which are just an absolute banger.
Which I remembered the kill box, and going into that last set, I was very excited to see how they did the kill box, and I was not disappointed.
Okay, no, I want to hear this. I want to hear more.
There's just not really much to say. It was
they just did a good one-to-one adaptation?
I wouldn't say one-to-one because the whole party was there from the start. This happened way later. They were not split up. Rather than say the Feywild stuff didn't happen while I was watching.
Oh, okay.
So they added in some more difficulty to things, because you're dealing with just Grog, a depowered Grog and the gnomes instead of everyone.
That really helps it feel... It makes it a better, climax to that storyline.
Yeah.
And puts the focus in on Grog in the same way that, the various acquiring of the vestiges, which has been the through line for the whole season, is they're acquiring these artifacts of power to help them kill the dragons. Each vestige acquisition episode, barring one, was very much about the character who's getting that vestige.
Yeah.
The only real exception is Mythcarver, and that's because they split the acquisition of that particular one into 2 separate things. So Scanlan has sort of 2 separate little moments there.
Well, and I mean, the Umbrasyl runs off with it immediately afterwards. So.
Yeah, Scanlan does a little thing and then gets Mythcarver, a little moment to shine to show some depth. And then it gets taken away, and he shows much greater depth, ultimately, before the final climax of the series.
And that's kind of what we lead into with Belly of the Beast and the Hope Devourer, which was basically an hour-long fight scene.
Basically an hour-long fight scene with a dragon. Another thing I will say that this show does is it does a really great job of making dragons fucking scary.
Yeah.
Brim Scythe in the first season was kind of scary, but he also got killed in one episode.
He was kind of a bitch, and that was sort of implied in the narrative.
Yeah, he was the bitch of the dragons. He was the little brother.
I don't think he was in the conclave.
No, he was working for them. But all of the dragons who are in the Chroma Conclave are scary as fuck. and they feel like big giant threats that our protagonist can't just like adventure over. I really like that. They do a great job, and Umbrasyl himself does a great fucking job of being a boss. It seems like it should take 2 whole fucking episodes to beat.
Yeah, and I mean, it plays off. Like, these last 3 episodes play off, I feel, more faithfully than a lot of the moments in the predecessors. I remember a lot of the things that happened, even my foggy-ass memory, very specifically. And I was really excited to see them, including Grog being trailed behind the dragon as it flies away. Like, that was so cool, and I'm glad they animated it and we got to see it.
It looks really good, too.
Yeah, it was just really exciting, and, you know, it makes me remember why I like fight scenes in movies, because sometimes I can forget, especially in a world with fucking shaky cam and all that crap.
No, the fight scenes in movies aren't always the best. These fight scenes are all really good.
Yeah, they're fun. You can make an AMV to them if you wanted to.
Someone probably will.
Queue up your System of a Down in Linkin Park and just talk about how sad Vax is.
He is fucking crawling in his robes.
I think that was done really well too, visually. His transfer into Paladin.
Yeah, they really they lingered over it for a bit, but not in a bad way. It just took up more of the episodes in the season than I would have expected.
The other way around, and while I haven't seen it directly, I don't think the whole deal about, you know, the real beginning and apparently supposed to be a very romantic scene between Percy and Vex was done well. Like that little speech he gives her about her pure heart or whatever.
That seemed weird and cringe.
It wasn't very good.
Like,
I mean, it was a nice thing to say to your friend, you know,
yeah,
but it didn't sound like, wow, they're in love. I was like, that's supportive.
Yeah, he was a nice, supportive friend, and then it's like she really, like, that clearly really meant a lot to her. It came up later in the episode in a way that made it really clear it meant a lot to her, and I was like, wow, I feel like you took that more seriously than he meant it. But no, they're on the same vibe. I'm out of the vibe. They're on their own shit.
No, I didn't quite feel it was very strong myself. Now, again, like I said, I haven't seen that. And going forward, when we cover next season, I probably will not have seen most of it. I think there's a couple of episodes of actual play left, but they might skip that shit.
In contrast, I fucking love the whole Grog storyline this season. It is just wall-to-wall banger. It absolutely, from the very beginning, where he gets his beard, through to his frustrating mentor fight, right into the payoff, just absolute banger of storyline, really helps improve the problems that you mentioned with Grog in the first season, where he comes across as not, a barbarian who doesn't have a lot of book learning, as it were, and isn't, the smartest. He comes across as a lot more of their special friend, like Joey in the later seasons of Friends. In this season, he's able to show a lot more of his, like, no, I'm a functional adult side.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. That's a really great thing to do, because same thing with Scanlan. I fucking love Scanlan's storyline in this series, in this episode, this season.
You're in for a treat, my friend.
It has a really solid payoff.
I know a little bit about how everything concludes vaguely. And I think you're going to enjoy it when we get there.
I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to more of this show.